I still remember the sound of the coffee maker that morning. It kept dripping into the glass pot while my entire marriage quietly fell apart. Ryan didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He simply slid a stack of papers across the kitchen island and looked at me as if we were discussing the weather. I've already signed them. I stared at the documents without touching them. Divorce. 10 years together had been reduced to a few signatures and a legal stamp. What about us? I whispered. Ryan let out a tired sigh. There is no us anymore, Emily. The room suddenly felt smaller. Only 3 days earlier, we had left a fertility specialist's office after months of testing. The doctor had explained that getting pregnant naturally would probably be difficult and could take time. There were treatments, options, and hope. I heard every word. Ryan only heard one sentence. It may be difficult. That was enough for him. I've always wanted children, he said quietly. I don't want to spend the next 10 years waiting for something that may never happen. I looked at him in disbelief. So you're giving up? I'm choosing the life I always wanted. And what about the life we already built? He looked away. I deserve to be a father. The words cut deeper than anything else. As if I had stolen that dream from him on purpose. Before leaving, he picked up his suitcase. I hope one day you'll understand. The front door closed. The silence that followed lasted much longer than the sound of the door. I spent the next week pretending I was fine. I smiled at coworkers. I answered my mother's phone calls. I even went grocery shopping like everything was normal. Then one evening, I accidentally opened social media. The first photo I saw stopped my heart. Ryan was smiling beside a beautiful blonde woman named Claire. The caption read, "Some people come into your life exactly when you need them." The photo had been posted only 6 days after he moved out. 6 days. People in the comments congratulated them. His mother replied with 3 red hearts. One of Ryan's cousins wrote, "Finally, someone who can give you the family you've always wanted." I closed the app, then deleted every social media account I had. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. Ryan never argued over the paperwork. He didn't fight for the house. He didn't ask how I was doing. He simply disappeared. A few weeks later, I heard through an old friend that he and Claire were engaged. The speed of it all made something painfully clear. He hadn't found Claire after leaving me. He had already found her before. That realization hurt far more than the divorce itself. For weeks, I blamed myself. Maybe if I had started treatment sooner. Maybe if I had prayed harder. Maybe if I had been stronger. But one afternoon, my older sister, Hannah, drove 6 hours just to see me. She walked into my apartment, hugged me, and said something I'll never forget. "Stop apologizing for something that was never your fault." I broke down crying for the first time. Not because Ryan had left. Because someone finally reminded me that I still had value. That conversation changed everything. I sold the house. Accepted a marketing position in Seattle. Packed everything I owned into a moving truck. I wasn't running away. I was giving myself permission to begin again. Seattle welcomed me with endless rain and fresh air. Nobody there knew my story. Nobody looked at me with pity. I rented a small apartment overlooking Elliott Bay. Every morning, I walked to work carrying coffee in one hand and hope in the other. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. Nearly a year passed. Life slowly became beautiful again. One Saturday morning, my best friend Olivia convinced me to volunteer at a community food drive. "I promise," she laughed. "You'll meet nice people." I almost didn't go. Thank goodness I did. Halfway through the afternoon, I accidentally dropped an entire box of canned food. Cans rolled across the parking lot. Before I could chase them down, someone started collecting them. "Looks like these are making a run for it." I laughed. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. The man handed me the last can. "I'm Daniel." "Emily." His smile wasn't flashy. It was warm, comfortable, like sunlight after weeks of rain. Over the following months, we kept running into each other. At charity events, coffee shops, weekend markets. Eventually, he asked if I'd like dinner. I hesitated. He noticed. "You don't have to answer today. No pressure." That simple sentence told me everything I needed to know about him. He respected boundaries. something Ryan had stopped doing long before our marriage ended. Our first date lasted nearly 4 hours. We talked about books, travel, childhood memories. He never asked uncomfortable questions. He never tried to impress me. He simply listened. Months later, when I finally shared the truth about my marriage, he stayed completely silent until I finished. Then he reached across the table. "Emily." I looked up. "If someone only loves you when life is easy." He smiled softly. "They never deserved you in the first place." Tears filled my eyes. Not because I was sad. Because nobody had spoken to me with that much kindness in years. For the first time since my divorce, my heart wasn't trying to survive. It was finally ready to live again. Daniel never rushed me. He never asked where our relationship was going. Instead, he showed up in the little moments that most people never notice. When my car refused to start before work, he was there with jumper cables and 2 cups of hot coffee. When I caught the flu, he left homemade soup outside my apartment with a handwritten note that simply read, "Get well soon." No need to answer the door. And every Friday evening, without fail, he'd text me the exact same question. "How was your week?" Not because he wanted a quick answer. Because he genuinely wanted to know. One evening, almost 2 years after we first met, Daniel invited me to a quiet beach overlooking Puget Sound. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. We sat on a weathered wooden bench, listening to the waves. "I've been thinking about something," he said. I smiled. "That usually means this is serious." He laughed softly. "It is." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Emily." He opened the box. Inside was a simple diamond ring. "I don't promise you a perfect life. I don't promise that every dream will come true. But I promise that no matter what happens, you'll never have to face it alone again." Tears blurred my vision. There were no photographers, no audience, no dramatic music. Just 2 people who had found each other after life had broken them in different ways. "Yes," I whispered. "Of course, yes." A year later, we married in a small ceremony on the Washington coast. 23 guests, ocean waves, a cool breeze, and more love than I had ever imagined possible. During his vows, Daniel looked into my eyes and said, "I didn't fall in love with the happiest version of you. I fell in love with the strongest." Not a single person there had dry eyes. Marriage with Daniel felt completely different. There were no competitions, no blame, no keeping score. We became partners in every sense of the word. Almost a year after our wedding, I began feeling unusually tired. I blamed work. Daniel wasn't convinced. "You've been falling asleep on the couch every night." "I'm just exhausted. Humor me." He placed a pregnancy test on the bathroom counter. I laughed. "You remember my medical history, right?" "I do." "Then why?" "Because sometimes life surprises us." Mostly to prove him wrong, I took the test. A few minutes later, I walked back into the bathroom. Then froze. 2 pink lines. I blinked. Looked again. Read the instructions 3 times. Bought 2 more tests that afternoon. Every single one showed the same result. Pregnant. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the phone when I called my doctor. After several examinations, she smiled. "Emily, your earlier diagnosis never meant pregnancy was impossible. It simply meant it could take longer." I laughed and cried at the same time. Daniel cried openly. He wrapped me in the biggest hug of my life. 9 months later, our daughter Lily entered the world with a loud cry and a full head of dark hair. The moment the nurse placed her in my arms, I forgot every painful word anyone had ever said to me. Because this little girl didn't care about my past. She only knew I was her mom. Life became beautifully chaotic. Late-night feedings. Tiny socks disappearing in the laundry. Finger paintings covering the refrigerator. Every exhausting day somehow became my favorite day. 2 years later, another surprise arrived. Twins. Noah and Ethan. When the ultrasound technician announced there were 2 babies, Daniel laughed so hard that everyone in the room started laughing with him. Our house became wonderfully loud. There were toys in every corner. Blankets on every couch. Tiny footsteps racing through the hallway every morning. Sometimes I'd pause in the kitchen just to listen. The sound of children laughing. The sound I once believed I'd never hear. One rainy afternoon, nearly 3 years after Lily was born, an elegant envelope arrived in our mailbox. Inside was a formal invitation to a charity gala hosted by Ryan's family's company. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Emily, I know I don't deserve your time, but I'd truly appreciate it if you came. There are things I need to say. Daniel read it quietly before handing it back. You don't owe him anything. I know. So why are you thinking about going? I looked toward the backyard where Lily was helping the twins build a tiny castle out of cardboard boxes. Because I don't want the past to have power over me anymore. The night of the gala, I wore a simple navy blue dress. Daniel looked impossibly handsome in his charcoal suit. Lily insisted on wearing a tiny silver bow in her hair. The twins matched their father with miniature ties. When we walked into the ballroom, conversations slowly faded. Several people recognized me immediately. Whispers spread across the room. Ryan turned around. The moment he saw us, the color drained from his face. His eyes moved from Daniel to Lily, to Noah, to Ethan. He looked completely frozen, as if the world had suddenly stopped making sense. He walked toward us slowly. Emily. I smiled politely. Hello, Ryan. His voice cracked. You have children. Yes. He stared at Lily, who was happily holding Daniel's hand. Then he looked at the twins. I don't understand. I answered calmly. The doctors said it might take time. They never said it was impossible. For several long seconds, Ryan couldn't speak. Then he whispered the words he probably never imagined saying. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Before I could answer, his mother approached. The same woman who had once called me less of a woman. She stopped the moment she saw my children. Her confident smile disappeared. She looked at me with tears forming in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Emily. I nodded respectfully. I hope you've learned not to judge someone's future by one difficult season. She lowered her head in silence. Ryan looked at Daniel. You gave her everything I should have. Daniel smiled kindly. No. I simply appreciated what you threw away. Ryan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with regret. I've thought about you every day. I've wanted to apologize for years. I was selfish. I was impatient. I believed fear instead of love. He looked at my family standing together, then back at me. If I could go back, I'd change everything. I smiled gently. I believe you. Hope flickered across his face for a brief second. Then I quietly added, but that's the thing about life, Ryan. You don't get to rewrite the chapters where you walked away. He lowered his head. I'm sorry. I know. And I forgive you. His eyes filled with tears. But forgiveness isn't the same as a second chance. I reached for Daniel's hand. Lily wrapped her little fingers around mine. The twins laughed as they raced toward the dessert table. That was my future, not the man standing behind me. As we walked toward the exit, I glanced back one last time. Ryan stood alone in the middle of the ballroom, finally understanding that he hadn't lost me because fate was unfair. He had lost me the moment he chose fear over love. I looked at Daniel and smiled. Ready to go home? He squeezed my hand. Home is wherever we're together. We stepped into the cool Seattle night, surrounded by laughter, love, and the family I had once believed I'd never have. For years, I thought the happiest day of my life would be the day I finally became a mother. I was wrong. The happiest day was the day I realized my worth had never depended on someone else's opinion. And once I believed that, everything else fell beautifully into place.